So recently, it has been announced that Amazon will be taking over the James Bond franchise. After a gap of a few years since No Time to Die, wherein no Bond films seem to have seriously been put into production, this news gives fans of the franchise at least something to look forward to, as it means a new Bond and possibly a new direction for the character. However, for some, this has led to some speculation that this might lead to more feminized, DEI driven 007 with a possibility of even swapping out the main character for a person of color or even placing a woman into the lead role. Now, I don't think these are concerns that should seriously be considered. In fact, one could argue that Amazon already has almost an American version of the James Bond franchise in the Jack Reacher series, and the 007 will likely emulate that formula of adapting the popular book series into some sort of viable story plot. Sure, there will likely be some singling of gay characters or swapping out of supporting characters at MI6 for more diverse ones, but at the end of the day, James Bond is more likely than not going to be a charming Brit with masculine tendency who likes his cars, guns, martinis, and women. Amazon is well aware of the built-in audience that exists for Bond films and know that middle-aged dads and boomers are a key demographic who have embraced streaming in recent years and enjoy their heroes as competent tough guys who get things done and take care of business. This is somewhat a throwback to traditional hero tropes, which has played well with this group, and I don't see this record of success necessarily being changed for a more DEI Bond. At the end of the day, I can make a few predictions, and I think the following will occur with the Amazon Bond. Number one, I actually think a little to somewhat well known British actor will be cast in the role. He won't have quite the physical presence of a Daniel Craig, but will probably be well coached in what I call the James Bond swagger, the mixture of body language, attitude, and devil may care charm that makes Bond Bond. I'm sorry, but I also don't think we're ever going to see Henry Cavill as James Bond. But we'll always have The Man from Uncle, where we essentially see a non James Bond, James Bond. I also think, unfortunately, we'll continue to see a somewhat pensive and emotional 007 akin to the Daniel Craig era. The days of the carefree, smirking killer Bond who could shoot 12 men, crack a one liner, and never think of it again are likely gone. Instead, we'll have a Bond who is probably more sullen in nature and much more emotionally affected by the circumstances of whatever mission or circumstance he's part of. The womanizing will also be present, but probably in a much more limited and subtle way. I doubt we'll see him, calling girls honey, slapping their rear ends, and essentially being God's gift to women, none of whom can resist him. Rather, the film will likely simply imply his womanizing ways via some sort of reference of a reputation of him batting beautiful babes instead of actually showing it throughout the movie. There'll definitely be a romantic interest for sure, but it'll probably be in the form of a more capable, independent operator girl versus the more effeminate ladies we've seen in many of the traditional films. Amazon isn't quite ready to have leading ladies simply be pretty and just get weak in the knees for James yet. There will be, as I mentioned earlier, probably some left leaning DEI signaling, and that may be distracting to some. However, I don't think it's going to be as imposing as it has been in previous years. For instance, don't be surprised to hear that Moneypenny, M, or Q will mention going out on a date, but that the date or the partner is of the same sex as them. Don't cringe when the director who briefs the mission mentions preferred pronouns. Don't dismiss the movie when a female operative saves James Bond by shooting better and acting smarter than Bond himself. These will likely be there. There are going to be elements and there'll be slight distractions, but they actually won't impact the main storyline, although it will irritate some. If multiple movies do come from this franchise, it's likely that there'll also be more elements that are built up over several films, and the movies themselves won't necessarily be completely self contained stories, but rather part of a bigger picture. I also don't think that the movie will take place in the past during the Cold War, as some suggest. However, doing a Bond from the classic spy era would be interesting and also allow Amazon to avoid the elephant in the room, which is Bond is essentially dead. He's been killed in the last movie. And regarding this, that regardless of how they do it, it'll be interesting to see how that subject matter is tackled. They could actually show that he somehow survived. They could definitely state that James Bond is not just one person, but instead just a name given to various operatives over the years. Or they could simply ignore it and have the Bond franchise almost rebooted as a completely different person versus having some sort of legacy continuation from the previous films. At the end of the day, I am a James Bond fan. And having read all of the original Fleming books and actually many of the other novels in the James Bond series, I do look forward to what's going to come. I'm looking forward to hearing the famous Bond, James Bond line, seeing the newest Aston Martin or whatever car that Bond's driving, just kind of racing through the streets of some exotic location. I can't wait to see him order a shaken, not stirred martini, whipping out his Walther PPK, and right before the credits roll, dating a beautiful woman. Anyhow, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.